Yes, Mr. Millett. Now you have another witness for us.
Mr. Chairman, I do. May I please now call Ms. Judith Blakeman?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mrs. Blakeman.
Good afternoon, it's Ms.
Ms. Blakeman.
Ms.
Yes, sorry. I understand that you're going to make the affirmation.
Yes.
Yes. Could you read the words on the screen then, please?
I do solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much. Do sit down and make yourself comfortable. Yes, Mr. Millett.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Ms. Blakeman, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can I begin by thanking you very much for coming to the inquiry and assisting us with our investigations? We're extremely grateful to you. My questions are intended to be short and simple. Sometimes they are anything but. If you want me to repeat a question or put it in a different way, I'm very happy to do that. May I also ask you, please, not to nod or shake your head, but to say yes or no, as the case may be. Also, please, to keep your voice up so that the person who is sitting to your right can get down everything you say fully and clearly.
Thank you.
Now, if you need a break at any time other than the scheduled breaks that we are going to take during the course of your evidence, then please just say and we can take a break to suit you. Now, you've made one statement to the inquiry and I believe 3 to the Metropolitan Police. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
I thought I'd made 2 to the Metropolitan Police, and there's an inaccuracy and a typo in the second Metropolitan Police statement.
Right. Well, let's look at your inquiry statement and the ones we're going to look at. RBK 3054461. May we have that up on the screen, please? Is that the first page of your inquiry witness statement?
Yes.
And if you go to page 29, you'll see a signature there above a date. The date is the 11th of October 2019. And there's a signature. Can you confirm that that's your signature?
That's right.
I'm going to call that your inquiry statement. Can we go to MET 3021448 next, please? Is that the first of your Metropolitan Police statements?
Probably, I can't remember.
It's dated the 7th of July,
right, yeah, that
2017. Does that help?
Yeah.
Can you confirm that that is your statement? There's no signature on it?
Yes.
It is. I'll call that your first statement to the Metropolitan Police, or MPS. There's a statement at MET 3045751. Can we have that up, please? That's a statement which has your name and signature on it, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes.
With the date of the 28th of June 2019.
Yes.
And I'll call that your second statement. And then there's also a statement, MET 3065151, if we can have that up, please, which also looks like a Metropolitan Police statement. Is that correct?
I think so, yeah.
Yes. And that has your name and signature on it. Can you confirm that that is your signature?
That's my signature, yeah.
Yes, and it's above the date 10th of February 2020. And I'll call that your third police statement.
Okay, right, yeah.
Have you read these statements that I've shown you recently?
I've read the long one. The middle one, the June one.
Right. You say the June one. You mean the one, the first police statement?
The one that I submitted to this inquiry.
Yes. Right. Do I take it that you haven't read your other statements recently?
No.
I see.
I've read the witness statement.
The inquiry witness
The
statement?
inquiry, yeah.
Right, let's just be absolutely clear. Can we have that back, please? RBK 3054461. You've read that statement recently?
I read that this morning, yeah.
Thank you. Can you confirm that the contents of that statement are true?
Yes, to the best of my ability to remember, yeah.
Thank you. And can you confirm that the contents of the other statements that I've shown you are also true, to the best of your recollection?
Apart from the typo and the misremembered bit on page 1 of the June statement.
Can you then identify that for me? Can we have that back, please? MET 3045751. That's what you call the June statement?
Yes. In the last paragraph, it says at the very end of 2013, as I was the Labour Group's housing spokesperson, I was appointed to serve on the board of the TMO. It should read at the very end of 2012, and I wasn't the Labour Group's housing spokesperson until 2014.
I see. Thank you. Subject to that correction, can you confirm that the contents
Yes.
of this witness statement are true?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Now, I want to ask you about your background. Very briefly, is it right that you hold a postgraduate certificate in business studies? Yes?
Yes. Sorry.
Yes. And a master's degree in industrial relations?
Yes.
Yes. And I think you at one time in your career acted as a trade union official.
Yes.
And you, I think, held the position of elected councillor for the Notting Dale ward within RBKC.
Yes.
And I think you were
I still do.
I was going to ask you next, were you returned on the 6th of May
Yes.
this year? Grenfell...
No, not this year. We didn't have London elections this year for council.
Sorry, last year.
No, 2018.
Right, I see. But Grenfell Tower is located in your ward, is it?
Yes.
And you've held, is this right, you've held that position since 2010?
Yes.
Yes. And I think that was were new ward boundaries created in that year?
Yes.
Yes. And before that, is this right, you were an elected councillor at RBKC from 1978?
Yes, with a 4-year break from 1990 to 1994.
Yes. And an RBKC councillor, as such, you held, I think, a number of positions,
Yes.
committee positions. And they included, did they, the Housing and Property Scrutiny Committee?
Yes.
And the Licensing Committee and Appeals Panel.
Yes.
So far as the Housing and Property Scrutiny Committee is concerned, can you confirm the dates of your membership?
The Housing Committee, I think it was 2014 to 2019. I'm not sure about the date I stopped.
And what
It might
about-
have been 2018.
Right. But you started in 2014?
Yes.
Do you remember when in 2014? Would it have been in the May?
May, yeah.
So May, we could take it as generally the changeover
Yes.
month for
Yes.
organisational changes within the council. And what about the Licensing Committee and Appeals Panel? When did you become a member of that?
I've been on the Licensing Committee for a very long time. I forget how long. And the Appeals Panel doesn't exist any longer.
Right. Now, you were elected to the TMO board, I believe, as a non-executive director.
No, I was appointed.
When I say elected, you were you say appointed. Let me try a different word. You were, I think, nominated
Yes.
by RBKC
Yes.
and appointed on the basis of that nomination.
Yes.
Right. Can we look, please, at TMO 00883922? This is a board meeting minute of the board of the TMO relating to a board meeting on the 15th of November 2012. Mm-hmm. And you could see the list of people present. And if you look down the list just below, halfway down, you can see your name. Yes?
Yes.
Council-appointed board member.
Yes.
So it looks as if you were a council-appointed board member from at least that date.
Yes.
Yes.
That was the first board meeting I attended.
Thank you. That was my next question. And is it right you were a board member until 2017?
Yes.
And as a board member, you were also a member of the TMO Operations Committee.
Yes.
Can you confirm the dates between which you held that position?
I think the Ops Committee I joined in 2013, and again I was on that until I was removed from the board in 2017.
2017.
Mm-hmm.
And was it... we have a note of you attending an Operations Committee meeting in the January of 2013.
Yeah.
Would that be the first time you attended such a...
Probably, yes.
Right. And we also understand that you were a co-opted member of the Lancaster West EMB.
Yes.
And we have a minute for that meeting, or for a meeting relating to that from January 2013. Can you confirm the dates that you were a member of the EMB?
No, I can't, because I gave all my files on the EMB directly to the Metropolitan Police. I didn't think I needed to go back that far.
Right. Well, let's see how we go with that, because we may look at some EMB minutes as we go
Oh,
through.
right, okay.
Can I turn then to your understanding of the relationship between the TMO and RBKC? And I'll start, if I can, please, with RBK 3050806. Now, this is the first page of the TMO's, I'll call it the Constitution. It's both. It's the amended Memorandum and Articles of Association together of the TMO. And if we look at page 2, we can see that the TMO is a company limited by guarantee. Did you understand that the TMO was a separate entity from RBKC?
Officially, yes.
Officially, yes. Unofficially?
Well, in practice, whatever disagreements they may have had with the council, they always provided a united front.
You say they. Who's the they?
The TMO and the council.
I see. When facing the outside world?
Yes.
Right. Did you understand that the TMO's board had a primary function under the Articles of Association to ensure the proper day-to-day management of the TMO and its affairs?
Yes.
Did you understand that the TMO's decision-making was supposed to be independent from RBKC?
In theory, yes.
In practice?
In practice, I wouldn't know.
In practice, you wouldn't know?
Well, in practice, as I said before, they produced a united front when challenged by anyone.
Right. What does that tell us about the extent to which the TMO's decision-making was, in reality, independent from RBKC?
I don't know. I can't answer that because, it's only because of watching the inquiry that I've become aware of the various dissent behind the scenes between the TMO and the council.
I would ask you to put out of your mind the evidence that you've heard in the inquiry and concentrate on what you remember from the time that we're looking at, if we can. Obviously, I know it's difficult to do that, but in your own experience at the time, was the decision-making by the board of the TMO genuinely independent from RBKC? That's a broad question, but in general.
I'm not sure I can answer that. I mean, it appeared to be independent.
Can we look at TMO 00880-530? This is the first page of, and I'll wait for it to appear, a witness statement of Faye Edwards, who was chairman of the board at a particular time. And my first question is, do you remember when Faye Edwards was chairman of the TMO board?
I think she was chairman the whole time I was on the board.
Right. If you look at page 3, at paragraph 14 of her statement, she says this: as far as the section in the inquiry's letter headed oversight is concerned, the way that I understood it very simply was that RBKC was effectively the boss, in quotation marks. They would hold the purse strings and ultimately decide what the TMO could and could not do. I was aware that the executive team produced reports which were sent to RBKC for scrutiny. Did you share Faye Edwards' understanding of RBKC's relationship with the TMO described in that first sentence there?
I think broadly, yes.
Were you aware that the TMO's relationship with RBKC was governed by a contract, a written contract called the Modular Management Agreement, or
yes.
MMA? You were. Did you ever read the MMA?
I read the MMA in depth when the TMO was first set up in, I think, 1996, and I haven't really read it in depth since then. I just looked at the amendments from time to time. Right.
You looked at the amendments from time to time. Did you ever have cause to consult it on a problem-by-problem or question-by-question basis?
I didn't bother.
You didn't bother? Why was that?
I thought it was a statement of, again, it was theoretical rather than practical.
Right. Can I ask you to look at some sections of it, bearing in mind that you thought it was theoretical rather than practical? Can we go, please, to RBK 30190006? This is Volume 2, Chapter 2,
Mine says volume
Sorry,
1.
you've got the first page in front of
Yeah.
you. That's page 1. That is not what I'm showing you. Can we go to page 163, where we do have volume 2, chapter 2, schedule 3 of the 2006 MMA.
Yes.
I should tell you that parts of this document were revised in December 2015. Now, this schedule is entitled Principles for the Management of Major Works Schemes. Are you familiar with this schedule, or were you at one time?
Well, possibly in the 1990s, but certainly not now.
Right. Let's see how we go. Can we move forward 2 pages to page 165 and look at paragraph 2.1 under the heading Client Review Group? And this says the neighbourhood manager and project manager will decide whether to establish a client review group or steering group for the project. This will be chaired by a representative of the Residents' Association and will include the neighbourhood manager and project manager. The role of this group will be to act as client for the project, review progress in implementing the scheme, and focus on those issues which directly concern residents. Where it is decided not to establish a client review group, the Residents' Association will be asked to nominate a representative to join the project team. Did you ever have cause to see or look at this provision during the Grenfell Tower project?
No.
If we look at page 167, paragraph 5.2, there's a provision dealing with consultancy services manager, and it essentially says that it says the project manager, consultancy services manager, neighbourhood manager, and residents' association representatives will select suitable consultants with relevant experience. And then there's a list of consultants, including architecture. Were you aware of that provision?
No, I wasn't.
Page 174, and I think the answer to this would be the same, but help me. Paragraph 15.3 on page 174. Top of page 175, to ensure the residents' concerns are addressed, the Residents' Association representative can either attend the site meeting or a meeting can be held with the Residents' Association prior to the site meeting. Feedback will be provided to the residents after the site meeting where necessary. Were you aware of that provision?
No.
And I take it similarly on page 177, paragraph 22.1, all schemes will be subject to a post-project review. You weren't aware of that provision either?
Other than that, I was told at the end of the project that there would be a review.
We'll come back to that topic
Okay.
later on, but I just draw that to your attention. But other than that, were you ever aware
No.
of that provision?
Well,
No.
probably not since the 1990s.
Right. So can we take it that you never had cause to refer to them in support of your work on behalf of the residents of Grenfell Tower?
No, I don't think I had an up-to-date copy of the MMA.
Right. As a board member of the TMO, was your function nonetheless to make sure that the TMO performed its contractual obligations to RBKC
Yes.
and to benefit the tenants?
Yes. And the leaseholders.
And the leaseholders, certainly. And indeed, all residents
Yeah.
of buildings contained within the TMO stock.
Yeah.
That being so, can you explain why you weren't familiar, or at least in possession of a working familiarity with at least the provisions I've shown you?
I don't think any member of the board was. I mean, I may be wrong, but...
Right. During your time as board member, did anybody ever have cause to examine any provision in the MMA?
When I was on the EMB, there were some amendments made, but not since then.
Right. Can you remember the dates of that?
Oh, crikey. Well, before the EMB was abolished, not long before the EMB was abolished. I forget what year it was abolished in.
Well, I'm not sure it was actually... is it right that it was actually abolished, or did it just fall into disuse?
No, there were two residents' meetings, and at the second one, I think it was said that it was going to be abandoned, abolished, or got rid of.
Right. Right. But other than that, Can we take it that nobody on the TMO board, so far as you could detect, ever had cause to look into the details of the contractual relationship between between?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, there may have been, but I was certainly not aware of anything.
Right. Now, can we then turn to your role as TMO board member and start by looking back at the Constitution, RBK 3050806. And on that page, we see, again, the first page. And if we go to page 2, we can see Article 4.1 of the memorandum under Objects and Powers. And 4.1 says, the company is established to manage and maintain the housing stock and ancillary properties of the Royal Borough, and in that all other respects to manage its affairs in accordance with the management agreement dated 28 February 1999 between the Royal Borough and the company as amended from time to time. Were you aware of those objects?
Yes.
Yes. Then if we look at the purpose of the board, we can see that set out on page 20 of this document, Article 22, and that says the functions of the board. 22.1, the board shall be responsible for ensuring that the objects of the company are carried out and for ensuring proper day-to-day management of the company and its affairs. 22.2, the board should adopt codes of conduct, policies and standing orders dealing with the conduct of business and the conduct of elections by the company and other such matters as may appear appropriate to the board from time to time. All such codes, policies and standing orders shall be made available for inspection upon request by members. Now, it's clearly stated here that the board is the body that bears the responsibility for ensuring that the TMO carried out its objects, namely managing and maintaining RBKC's housing stock. Were you conscious of that responsibility as a member of the TMO board?
The first part, yes, but not ensuring proper day-to-day management. I mean, obviously, we wouldn't have had time to do that.
You wouldn't have time to do...
Ensure the proper day-to-day management.
Right. Is that not how you saw your function on the board?
No.
To make sure that day-to-day management was operating properly?
To make sure that the board was operating properly, yes. The company operating properly, yes. But not day-to-day management.
Right. So just to be very clear, when you were a member of the board, you didn't understand that your role as a director, a member of the board, was to ensure proper day-to-day management of the company and its affairs?
Well, I wouldn't have had the time, and I'd be surprised if other board members did.
I wonder if there's a bit of confusion here. I think what Mr. Millett's asking you to consider is whether you regarded it as part of the board's responsibility not to carry out the day-to-day management, but to ensure that it was properly carried out.
Oh, right, yes, yeah, of course.
If we go to page, if we go to the TMO 10015-897, please. This is something called the TMO Board and Committee Members Code of Conduct. And on page 1, you can see scope and general conduct and behaviour. Is that a document you've ever seen before, do you think?
Yes.
It is. Were you familiar with it during
Yes.
your time as a director?
Yes.
You were. And it says under scope, board and committee members are expected to adhere to the highest standards of conduct and probity. This code sets standards which will enable members to maintain the values and mission of the Kensington and Chelsea Tenant Management Organisation Limited, the TMO, and to protect themselves, the organisation and its staff from misunderstanding and criticism. This code applies to all board and committee members, hereinafter referred to as board members of the organisation. It follows best practice of the NHF's Excellence in Standards Code and reflects the TMO's Code of Governance and its constitution. And if you look a little bit lower down the document onto page 2, please, paragraph 7, it says this: the role of the board member carries with it certain obligations and responsibilities, and each board member has a fiduciary duty to act in the best interests of the organisation. Before they can act, board members are required to sign a statement accepting their obligations and responsibilities. These include representing the values and objectives of the TMO, upholding the TMO's policies and reputation, contributing to and sharing responsibility for board and committee decisions. Conduct which is materially in breach of any obligation set by the board for all its members will be deemed to be negative conduct. I wonder if I can summarise it and see if you accept a number of propositions. Do you accept that you and your fellow board members were required, first, to adhere to the highest standards of conduct and probity?
Yes.
And to act in the best interests of the TMO?
Yes.
You don't sound sure.
Well, I clarified with the borough's solicitor what my role on the board was. Was it analogous to being a non-executive director? And she said yes, which meant that I had to be critical where I thought the TMO was going wrong. And if you go on through this code of conduct, you come to the Nolan principles, which include openness, accountability, and honesty.
Yeah. Thank you, indeed. Just going on, were you required to, as you understood it, represent and uphold TMO values?
I don't know what the TMO values were.
Right. Uphold and TMO's policies and reputation?
Yes.
Yes. Contribute and share in responsibility for board decisions?
Yes.
Now, the role, as we can see, required a fiduciary duty from you to the TMO. Do you agree that that duty included a requirement to exercise independent judgment in considering the business of the TMO?
Yes.
And that independent judgment, do you accept, included scrutiny of decisions taken by TMO officers, executive officers, as well as diligent consideration of any issues that were before the board at any particular time?
Yes.
Did you always feel equipped to scrutinise the decisions made by TMO officers?
No, because I'm not technical.
So how would you...
Sorry, I don't have technical building skills.
How would you go about scrutinising their decisions?
Well, I would hope and expect that the people that they employed and the consultants they used were aware of what their requirements were.
Right. So you trusted them to get it right?
I did, yes.
Yes. How would trusting them to get it right be objective, independent, ruthless and robust scrutiny?
Can you rephrase the question? I didn't
Yes.
quite understand.
If you trusted them to get it right, and that's really a paraphrase of what you've described, how could you hold those officers rigorously to account?
Well, I'm not sure that rigorously I could hold them to account.
Right. So how far would your scrutiny abilities extend in circumstances where you trusted them to get it right?
Again, I don't quite understand the question.
Well, if you trusted them to get it right,
Yeah.
What methods would you employ to scrutinise their decisions?
I'm still not confused. I mean, I'm still
Right.
confused. Sorry.
You accepted that you would bring an independent judgment to bear on decisions made by the TMO, and that included decisions made by TMO officers. How would you go about bringing that independent judgment to bear?
Well, I felt I was there to represent mainly the interest of the residents.
Yes.
So, and I think I was competent to represent the interests of residents.
Yes. And so, what kind of questions would you ask TMO executive officers in relation to decisions you wanted to scrutinise?
I'm sorry, I'm baffled.
Well, by my question?
Yeah.
All right, well, maybe
well, also by the process. I did not have all the skills
Yes.
required of a TMO officer So scrutinising those would have been difficult.
Yes, I understand.
In part.
I understand. Well, let's see how maybe the element of bafflement relating to my question can be cured by looking at some specific examples.
Okay.
And we'll do that and see how we go. Did you ever have any training over and above your general education, which you've told us about, on matters of corporate governance or company law procedure or anything like that?
I did on corporate governance when I was chair of the Community Health Council.
I see. And were you able to bring the learning you derived from that experience to your role as a board member on the TMO board?
Yes. Well, I hope so.
Right. Were you conscious of doing so?
From time to time, yes.
Yes. Now let's go to RBK 3054461. This is your inquiry statement, page 2, please. And let's look together at paragraph 10. Towards the bottom of your screen it says this: although the KCTMO is supposed to be resident-led, I saw little evidence of this during my time on the board. I found myself as the only Labour-nominated board member being asked to take up issues on behalf of residents of estates and blocks across the whole of the borough, including concerns about fire safety. The TMO Code of Conduct seems to restrict the opportunity for tenant and leaseholder board members to raise issues affecting residents, which is one reason why I felt I was often the only board member speaking on their behalf. Why did you find the board was not resident-led?
Because basically we received reports from the officers and from the executive team, and we were expected to endorse them, really.
Right. Was the board not comprised of a majority of tenants or residents?
There was one resident majority.
Yes.
But I recollect an instance when one of the leaseholders wanted to raise an issue relating to leaseholders on his estate, and he was not allowed to speak.
Right. But leaving aside that, just in terms of the general balance of power on the board, I just wondered why you say it wasn't resident-led when, as a matter of the Constitution at least, the board was required to have residents comprising the majority of its members.
Yes, it did. It had a majority of residents.
Right. So can you just help me understand paragraph 10? You say that the KCTM is supposed to be resident-led. Just pausing there. It was resident-led, was it not? In its constitution. Namely,
in its constitution, yes, but not in practice.
And was that because the minority of appointees who were not residents would do the leading, if I can put it that way?
Well, they would certainly do the leading on things like financial matters.
Right. What else?
Technical matters where they had more expertise than the residents.
If we go back to the Code of Conduct, you also refer to that. You said it seemed to restrict the opportunity for tenant and leaseholder board members to raise issues affecting residents. Can we go back to that, please? At TMO 100158897. Let's look at page 4. On that page, you can see paragraph 24 under the heading Conduct of Meetings. I'm so sorry, 21. I want 21. We can look at 24 separately. 21, board members. Can you see? Board members who are residents should regard matters specifically concerning their individual circumstances as a clear and substantial conflict. Matters affecting residents more generally need only be declared where they create a specific conflict of interest. Were you aware of this provision?
Yes.
Yes. What did you understand by affecting residents more generally there?
Well, technically, they could have raised issues that affected their estate, for example.
I see. So anything which extended beyond them individually?
Yes.
I see. How would a matter of general concern to residents create a specific conflict of interest? What's envisaged, as you understood it, by that provision?
I don't think I had a thought about that.
Right. Can you help me? In what situations would matters affecting residents generally, as opposed to personally or individually, create a conflict of interest that was required to be declared?
Well, if it had a financial impact upon themselves as an individual.
No, it says here, matters affecting residents more generally need only be declared where they create a specific conflict of interest. What I'm interested in is what sort of general matters affecting residents could create a specific conflict of interest?
I don't know.
Right.
Well, do you think it might apply, for example, if the TMO board were considering taking a step which would affect financially the residents of a particular estate, one of whom was on the board?
It could do, yeah.
Yeah.
Did that situation ever arise in practice to your
I think it may have done in the case that I just quoted. I don't know. I didn't know enough about the issue.
Right. And what about raising matters on behalf of a particular single resident? Did that ever create a clear and substantial or specific conflict?
I don't recollect ever anything arising affecting a single individual.
Very well. Now, if we continue on in this document to page 6, please. Let's look at paragraph 40 on that page, under the heading Reporting Issues of Serious Concern. And it says, board members who wish to raise issues of serious concern should do so through the chair. If this is not appropriate, the matter should be raised with the chief executive or company secretary. The TMO will ensure that board members who report in good faith issues of serious concern are protected from reprisal and or victimisation. Were you familiar with that procedure?
Yes.
What did you understand to qualify as serious concern here?
I don't know.
You don't know. Did you ever have occasion to consider that question?
Well, certainly in the case of the TMO review of the Grenfell Tower project, yes.
Right. Did you understand this provision to prohibit the raising of serious concerns with all TMO board members?
It doesn't say prohibit.
No, it doesn't. But did you consider that that was its effect?
Well, if one had announced that one was going to raise an issue and nobody demurred at the time, then one would assume that that were correct, that one could do that.
I see. Did you ever want to raise an issue of serious concern with the board generally, but felt you had to do it only through the chair?
No.
No. How regularly did you attend board meetings?
As often as I could.
Right. Did you carry out any responsibilities as a TMO board member outside board meetings, other than the committees on which you sat?
I don't know. I can't remember.
On the whole, was it your understanding or opinion, perhaps at the time, that the constitution and the governance structure of the TMO in reality, gave ordinary TMO residents fair representation and a clear voice in matters of how the TMO was run and what it did?
I got the impression that any tenant would go to their local councillor if they had an issue with the TMO.
Yes, that's not quite an answer to my question. Can I just press you a bit? Was it your view at the time that the way the TMO was set up, in practice, did allow ordinary residents of buildings in the TMO stock a fair representation and a clear voice in respect of how the TMO was run and what it did?
No.
No. Did you ever raise that question, a rather general structural question, with anybody within the TMO?
Not as a structural question, no.
Did you ever raise that question with anyone at RBKC?
I can't remember. I may have done, I can't remember.
Right. If you had done, who might it have been, do you know?
It would probably have been with a ward colleague or somebody like that, or a group colleague.
I see. I'd like to ask you now about some further details about the scope of your responsibilities as a ward councillor. In outline, can you help us? What were your responsibilities as a ward councillor?
To advocate on behalf of residents of the ward, to attend scrutiny meetings, to attend council meetings. I used to walk around the ward a lot to see what was going on, but that's because I had the time occasionally to do so. Can't remember what else.
Right. How would you become aware of concerns held or felt by residents within your ward?
They would either send me an email, or they might ring me, or they might come to the council's surgery.
Right. And how often did you hold your surgery?
Twice a month.
Twice a month. Could you only raise issues on behalf of residents if asked by them to do so, or could you or did you do so off your own bat?
No, I had to get the permission of the resident to raise an issue, which was normally done by just copying them into the email that I sent.
Right, I see. So in general, was email the way in which it was done?
That's the way I did it, yes.
Right. Could you, or did you feel you could decline to raise a concern raised by a resident with you?
Some, yes. If they went against the manifesto on which I was elected.
Right. Would you be able to describe the circumstances in which you would not take forward a resident's concern?
Well, when we were asked, for example, by a couple of residents to oppose the building of the Aldrich Academy, because it was in our manifesto and it had been since the 1990s that we needed a new secondary school in North Kensington. We were quite happy to oppose the site, but not the existence, the intention to build it.
Yes, thank you. Would you be able to raise concerns with the TMO as well in the same way as you would with RBKC?
Yes.
Yeah. Turning to the membership you had of the Housing and Property Scrutiny Committee next, I think it's right, you joined that committee in July 2014.
I think it was May 2014.
Right, the reason I ask you that is, well, let's look at a document, RBK 30014435. And this is a meeting of the 10th of July 2014 of the HPSC. I say July 2014 simply because that's the date of this meeting.
Yeah.
Do I take it you were appointed then in the May and that this was your first?
At the May annual general meeting of the council, yeah.
Yes, I see. And this was the first meeting you attended of that committee. Right. Did you attend HPSC meetings before you became a member of that committee?
Sometimes I would in the public gallery, yes.
Right. Let's have a look. Can we go to RBK 3029882, please? This is a minute of a meeting of the HPSC on the 20th of January 2011. And you could see that you were in attendance. You're the first named in attendance.
Yep.
Would you be named in attendance if you were in the public gallery?
Yes.
You would?
Well, usually. Sometimes I wasn't. Sometimes I was.
Right. The impression one gets from just looking at this document is that you were at the table, as it were, even if
not
a
at
member
the table.
of the committee. Right. So just
Can you help me a bit? Because I'm like Mr. Millett, possibly. I'm a bit puzzled by this. When the minutes identified people as being in attendance, I had, perhaps wrongly, understood that to mean in some formal capacity. I invited to attend the meeting, not simply as an observer.
No, as an observer, and possibly as a speaking observer, if there was something that I wanted to speak about, I would ask the chairman. But I wasn't there to provide advice or guidance or anything of that nature. I was just there to observe.
Right, thank you.
I see. When you say you would ask the chairman, would that be before the meeting, or would you raise your hand and be permitted to ask?
I'd raise my hand during the meeting.
I follow. Similarly, RBK 30014457. This is a meeting of the 16th of July 2013, and you are identified as being in attendance. The second name down in the list there. But again, were you in the public gallery then?
Yes.
I see. So it's the same. It's the same.
Yeah.
The same thing.
Yes, I normally only attended those meetings if there was something on the agenda that I was particularly interested in.
Right. I see. In fact, let's just look at that minute a little bit more closely. Can we go to page 2, please? We can see that under item A5, towards the bottom of that page, there's a Grenfell Tower update, which was given by Mr. Peter Madison. Was it that item in respect of which you were in attendance?
Yes.
I see. So would you attend as many HPSC meetings as you could relating to Grenfell Tower, even though you weren't yet on the committee?
Well, I'd try to, but it would depend on whether I was free that particular evening.
As I say, as many as you could.
Yeah.
You did, yes, right. Did you have any particular expertise or experience in housing matters?
Only what I'd picked up over the years.
Right. So can we take it that you never had any training on housing, health and safety, matters of that nature?
I had health and safety training in my employment before I retired.
Did you have any health and safety training relating specifically to fire safety there?
After the fire, yeah.
But during the years you were on, during the TMO board?
No.
No. Can we then look at RBK 3035012, please? And on page 1 of this part of the articles of RBKC, which is what we're looking at, this governs scrutiny committees, as you can see, Ms. Blakeman, from the top of the page, general remit, and under that, general duties of scrutiny committees. And you can see 5 powers set out there. And if we go to page 2...
Can I stop you there? Because point 4, exercise the right to call in, because of the limitations on the calling process, it wasn't actually possible for the opposition party to call anything in without the support of somebody from the majority party.
I follow. Would that apply to the other powers listed here?
Well, we tried to work collegiately as far as we possibly could.
Yes, certainly. But if, for example, you wanted, as a minority party councillor on this scrutiny committee, wanted to hold an inquiry into a matter, the subject of a report, you couldn't do that unless you had the majority of the majority.
Well, unless you had the support of the committee.
The committee,
yeah.
Right, yes. Turning to page 2. Yes, thank you. Turning to page 2, you can see that under B, terms of reference, which starts on the previous page, the obligations are to scrutinise, and you can see the list at the top of the page. And under item 5, we turn to page 3.
Sorry, which item 5?
Item 5, top of page 3, the tenant management organisation.
Yeah.
So you understood, is this right, that one of your jobs as a member of the Housing and Property Scrutiny Committee, when you were appointed, was to scrutinise the tenant management organisation?
Yes.
Yes. And that was notwithstanding that you were a member of the board?
Yeah.
Yes. Can we take it that, to the extent that that gave rise to a conflict in either position, everybody that you were aware of who needed to know about that conflict was aware of it?
I always declared my membership at the start of the meeting of the TMO board.
Very good. Can we then go to RBK 54461, your inquiry statement, page 8, paragraph 40. You say there, all decisions made by RBKC were made by the Cabinet. With regards to housing matters, the main responsibility fell on the Cabinet Member for Housing and Property Services, which was also the Deputy Leader of the Council, Councillor Rockfielding Mellon. Day-to-day responsibility was delegated to the Housing Department, of which the Director was Laura Johnson. The Housing Department oversaw the activity of the KCTMO. The HPSC was there to scrutinise the work of the Cabinet member, the Housing Department at scrutiny committee meetings approximately every 2 months, and the KCTMO every 6 months. I refer again to JMB1, a copy of the report to the HPSC dated 10th July 2014, which shows the detail of the information provided to the HPSC. If we consider together, please, first, the work of the Housing Department, how would HPSC go about scrutinising the work of that department?
Well, they would provide reports and we would question them about the reports if necessary.
You say if necessary. What would make it necessary?
If there was something in the report that we didn't understand or that we weren't happy with.
Right. What would make you unhappy? And it's a very broad question, but can you give us an indication of the kind of thing that would lead to unhappiness, which would in turn lead to scrutiny?
Well, if the report contains something that we felt was not quite accurate.
Right. Just looking at the face of the document is right.
Yeah.
Now, you've explained that you would receive a report from the Housing Department every 2 months at scrutiny committee. To what extent did you rely on the information provided in that report alone?
Well, quite significantly.
Right. You say quite significantly. When you were considering a report, did you have any other material on the table next to it?
No.
With which to compare it?
No.
Right. So you were entirely reliant on the content of what you were given?
Yes.
Did you have the power to request further information if you felt, or the committee felt, that an issue was not adequately addressed in the report?
Well, yes, because we could ask questions about the report.
Yes, but could you ask for further data?
I think in theory we could. I don't know if we ever actually did.
Right. Was there any review you undertook or the HPSC undertook of the systems maintained by RBKC for oversight of the TMO?
I don't recollect.
And would it follow that you have no recollection of any review of the systems maintained by RBKC for oversight of the TMO on fire safety?
Well, we had the report every 6 months from the TMO.
Yes. But
And
that
we
was
would
it.
ask questions about that.
Yes. So to the extent that fire safety was a topic, you would rely on those reports and nothing else?
Well, we'd question them if necessary.
Yes, but you'd rely on the data within
Yes.
those reports and nothing else? Yes?
Well, I personally would rely on the report given to the board as well, which actually helped me to ask questions at the scrutiny committee.
I see. So you were in a perhaps enviable or enviable, a slightly different position.
A different position.
You knew what the board was being told by the TMO's management.
Yes.
And other members of the scrutiny committee would not.
Not necessarily, no, unless it was included in the report.
Yes, I see. And would you use data or information or conclusions, perhaps, made by TMO officers and given to the TMO board when scrutinising the TMO's, when scrutinising the reports made by housing to the scrutiny committee at RBKC level?
I could do, yes.
Did you?
I think so.
Yes.
On occasion, not very often.
Right. And I detect that you are, in that sense, of course, because of those dual positions, something of a special case. But in general, given that the HPSC didn't have any decision-making power, how was it expected to stay on top of problems it was able to identify and ensure that those problems were dealt with to its satisfaction?
Well, from time to time, working groups were set up. I mean, there was a working group was set up about the Airbnb type issue, because that became a concern. I didn't sit on that working group, but it was set up to investigate things like that more thoroughly.
Right, working groups. And those were working groups, what, they were subgroups of the scrutiny committee, were they?
Yes.
But would the members of those working groups have any greater powers of investigation than the scrutiny committee itself?
Probably, because they could look in more depth, and sometimes they would have an advisor.
And the advisor would be from outside the council? Or
It could be from outside the council or inside the council.
Right. And who would decide whether to set up a working group?
The scrutiny committee.
Scrutiny committee. And we'll come later to what happened in early 2016 as a result of the Grenfell Tower residents' petition. Yes, indeed. But leaving that topic aside for the moment, do you recall any working groups being set up at the instance of the scrutiny committee in relation to housing, in relation to the TMO? Let me put it that way.
I can't recollect one, but there may have been.
Right. Do you know how the scrutiny committee was able to ensure that it knew what quality benchmarks it should be expecting the TMO to meet?
No, I don't.
I mean, for example, did the scrutiny committee ever get any independent, objective criteria or benchmarks with which it could compare what it was being told by housing and in turn by the TMO's board?
I know that one of my colleagues actually used to monitor what happened in Islington, and she used to occasionally compare what was happening in Kensington to what was happening in Islington.
Right. In what respect would she make that comparison?
The Airbnb working group that I referred to was one instance.
Right.
I think another instance was in relation to so-called affordable housing.
I see. Who was that councillor?
Councillor Press.
Councillor Press. Am I right in thinking that there was nobody on the HPSC who was an experienced fire safety professional?
Not to my knowledge.
So nobody on that committee could ensure that the TMO's fire safety strategy was not only appropriate but also being complied with?
That's correct.
Yes. In practice, was the scrutiny committee highly reliant on RBKC's officers, its executive officers, responsible for housing, for information about the performance of the TMO?
Yes.
Yeah. So in practice, I think you've already answered this, but it's right, I think, that the scrutiny committee's scrutiny function was only as good as the information given to it by RBKC's housing officers.
That's correct.
To what extent was the scrutiny committee, in your experience, an effective forum for raising tenants' concerns?
It didn't discuss individual cases.
General cases then relating to...
general cases like the power surges.
Yes.
I mean, I had to write about that, to ask them to consider it.
Yes, and to that extent, using that as an example, to what extent, in your view, was the scrutiny committee an effective forum for dealing with those concerns?
My impression was that they would support the TMO.
What gave you that impression?
Because they did.
Right. Did you ever raise any of the concerns that residents had raised with you with the HSP, with the scrutiny committee, the HPSC?
I think I may have raised what we referred to as social cleansing.
We'll come to that.
Okay.
That's the decant question.
Well, it wasn't just the decant question, no. It was also when a council flat, if an estate had been chosen for regeneration and some of the flats on that estate became empty, they wouldn't put another tenant in there. They would use them for temporary accommodation, which meant that they didn't have to rehouse the person that they'd put in whatever development they produced as a result.
Right. Would the scrutiny committee scrutinise the work of a cabinet member?
Well, that was their role, yeah.
Yes. How did it go about doing that?
Well, the cabinet member would produce the report and would then be questioned on it.
I see. But again, the basis of the question would be the report itself.
Yes.
No external information. Or you may have some external information.
Well, very rarely, yes.
Yes. Fire safety briefings. Can I ask you about that? Can you go, please, to your inquiry statement at page 3, paragraph 17? You say there, we just wait for it to come up, at the foot of the page. I refer also to 2 reports to the Housing, Environmental Health and Adult Social Care Scrutiny Committee in 2010 and the HPSC in 2011. Although I was not a member of the HPSC at that time, the reports may have been passed to me then, but in any event have been brought to my attention more recently. The first report to the committee on 15th of March 2010 is a joint report by the TMO Chief Executive Robert Black and the Chief Housing Officer Laura Johnson and is titled LGA Report Extinguishing the Risk, A Councillor's Guide to Fire Safety. I exhibit this as JMB 2. The second report to the committee on 20th of January 2011 is titled Fire Risk Assessments in RBKC Residential Blocks, Progress Report, and I exhibit this as JMB 3. Now, it's not clear from that whether you received these documents before the fire at Grenfell Tower.
No, I received them after the fire.
I see. Right. Well, let's, in the light of that, then, let's see how we go. They both refer, you may remember this, to something called the LGA Guidance for Local Government Association, Extinguishing the Risk, A Councillor's Guide to Fire Safety, as you've referred to it. Mm-hmm. Let's look at that. It's CST 404405. There it is. It's from the Chief Fire Officers Association. This is, as I think you've just confirmed, something you got after the fire.
Yes.
Just to confirm, you never saw this before the fire?
No.
Was there any discussion ever of this document in any of the board meetings or scrutiny committee meetings you ever attended?
Not that I recollect.
Right. So I'm going to take it that you weren't provided with this document when you joined the scrutiny committee in May 2014? No,
absolutely not.
No. The second document is RBK 405826. And if you look at the second email in the chain, it says, it's from Nicholas Holgate to, among others, Laura Johnson. And what he's doing here is forwarding a document he had received the day before, 14th July, from Rita Dexter at London Fire. And you can see that, and the reason I'm asking you about it is that one of the entities to which Mr. Holgate sends this document is HS Housing, RBKC. You see that? As one of the people to whom Mr. Holgate sends this email. And the subject of the email is 2 new guides for councillors about fire safety and know the plan. And if you look at the email at the foot of the page, in the second paragraph, Rita Dexter says to Nicholas Holgate, as part of this work, the brigade has produced 2 guides for councillors to try and assist them in understanding the key issues related to fire safety. One is for use in council and scrutiny meetings, and the other for use during estate visits. We want to let councillors in London know these publications are available and to encourage them to use them, and I'm writing to ask for your help in doing that. Please could you ensure that the links to the guides are passed on to your members? And then if you turn the page, please, to page 2, top of the screen, you'll see there are 2 links: Councillor Guide on Fire Safety for use during estate visits, Councillor Guide on Fire Safety for use during council meetings. And then there's a long passage about the Know the Plan. We haven't seen any emails showing that this was forwarded to you specifically or all councillors. Do you remember seeing it?
No, not until after the fire, when my colleague Councillor Mason wrote to the I think it was to new town clerk, and obtained a copy of it. Right.
Let me just show you 1 or 2 of the documents that were exhibited, and I'll show you one, I think, to keep it quick. Can we go to LFB 401295? This is the red one. There are 2. One was red, one was blue. Red one was for site visits, and the blue one was for the site visits, and the red one, as you can see, is for use during council meetings. And there's a striking image of a tower block in the shape of a question mark. Do you recall seeing this document before the fire at any time?
Not before the fire, no.
No. So the first time you saw it is after the fire?
Yes. Well, after my colleague Councillor Mason wrote and asked for a copy of it, and he sent it on to me.
Right. Can we take it then that, notwithstanding the circulation of this document within LBKC, it never crossed your desk?
I wish I had known about it at the time.
You can say that, can you, having now familiarised yourself
Absolutely,
with the document? Yes. And just so that we all know, you say, I wish I'd known that about it at the time. What would you have done had you known about it at the time?
Well, amongst other things, I would have asked about the arrangements for vulnerable residents.
Right.
Because I was aware that I had a lot of vulnerable residents. And indeed, actually, even after the fire, I had 2 elements of casework, one with the Housing Association and one with the council, when the residents had come to me and asked for a personal emergency evacuation plan, and on both occasions they were refused because the resident did not live in a tower block. I mean, I've since followed up on those.
Right. Are there other aspects of this document that, had you seen at the time, you would have acted upon, do you think?
And I think I would have asked some of the questions that they suggest, yes.
Right. Are you able, from your insight, knowledge, experience at the time, to explain how it came about that you were not provided with this document, despite the terms in which Rita Dexter asked for it to be disseminated?
Well, I would imagine it was in the gift of the whoever received it.
And are you able to explain why you didn't get a copy?
Well, I don't think anybody on the scrutiny committee got a copy. If they did, they wouldn't have got it through the normal scrutiny process.
Right.
Sorry, what was the rest of your question?
Well, let me try it a different way. Does the fact that you never received this document, despite the terms in which Ms. Dexter asked Mr. Holgate to disseminate it, indicate that something might have been wrong with the way in which incoming information about fire safety was disseminated to scrutiny committee members?
Yes.
Can I then turn to the question of oversight of fire safety and fire risk assessments, both in general terms? I'm going to assume, but correct me if I'm wrong, that you had never had, or have never had, and certainly prior to the fire, never had any training on the Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order 2005?
No.
Were you ever aware of its provisions?
No.
I'm going to assume that you never had any training on the guidance that was published as a consequence of those regulations,
No.
such as the Sleeping Guide 2006, no, the Local Authority, Local Government Association Guidance on Purpose-Built Flats,
No.
2011. No. Can we look at RBK 53546? And on page 1, you can see, I'll just wait for it to come. RBK 53546, thank you. Now, at the foot of page 1, you'll see an email from you to Robert Black and Laura Johnson at the TMO and RBKC Housing, respectively, 4th of July 2009, subject tower blocks. Dear Mr. Black and Ms. Johnson, in the light of the tragic fire yesterday in Camberwell, I'd be grateful if we can have risk assessment and report on the means of escape in the event of fire covering all the tower blocks in the TMO's ownership within the borough. At Grenfell Tower, for example, because of the council offices and EMB offices on the lower floors, getting out of this building by the stairs is extremely difficult. One can end up at a dead end. I would like to invite you to accompany me up to the top floor to see how difficult it would be to get out of this block in the event of an emergency. I look forward to an early response. Two things. First of all, would I be right in thinking that what prompted you to write this email on the 4th of July 2009 was the Lakenal House fire in Southwark the day before?
That's right. I'd seen the report on the news.
The first thing that appears to come to your mind, however, is Grenfell Tower.
Yes.
Does that tell us that even before the Lakenal House fire, you were concerned about the means of escape at Grenfell Tower in the event of a fire?
Well, yes, because there was only the one stairwell, and if you lived on the top floor, it actually took about, well, I mean, I was quite fit then. It took me about half an hour to walk from the top to the bottom.
Right. were you aware of fire risk assessments as a concept, at least, in 2009?
No. I don't recollect sending this email. I'm glad I did.
Had you raised your concerns about Grenfell Tower's means of escape, its single staircase, before the Lacknell House fire in July 2009?
I may have done, but I honestly can't remember.
Right. So you don't know whether this was the first time that you'd raised this concern with senior management, both at the TMO and...
It may have been the first time that I put it down in writing, yes.
Thank you. Can we look at Laura Johnson's response, please, to this, which is on page 1, a little bit higher up? She says, and this is the 5th of July, the next day, and she's copying others at RBKC on it, but it comes also to Robert Black. Councillor Blakeman, the Royal Borough is at present in discussion with the TMO on commissioning consultants to undertake a review of the relevant fire risk assessments of the communal areas of the council blocks, as this is legally required by the Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order. This process to date has been managed by the TMO, but it has been brought to our attention by the Fire Brigade that this will need to be more rigorous. Therefore, officers from the TMO and RBKC are in the process of setting up a working party to look at, and there are some bullet points, and you can see those, complying with proposed arrangements to set up a contract promptly with a competent fire safety company or consultant, etc. Review, challenge and support the consultant's recommendations, review considerable cost implications and agree how they will be funded. I haven't read this out fully to you, but I'm summarising or reading them in part. And then she says, I hope this answers your question in the short term, and when we have more information as a result of the review work, we will be able to brief councillors more fully. Regards, Laura Johnson, Chief Housing Officer. Can we take it, Ms Blakeman, that as a consequence of that response, you were aware or had become aware through this email of the existence of the Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order 2005?
Well, obviously I would have become aware of it. Whether it sunk in, I really can't remember because it's so long ago.
You'd become aware of the TMO's need to conduct more rigorous fire risk assessments to meet its regulatory requirements. That's essentially what she's saying. Yes. Yeah. Did you ever get an answer to your invitation to a site visit at Grenfell Tower to inspect the means of escape?
No, but I wasn't expecting them to agree to it.
Why is that?
Well, because I'd made invitations before to come and visit parts of where I represented. I mean, not just to the housing department, to other officers, and no one had ever agreed to it.
Right, so your invitation was issued more in hope than in expectation?
Yes.
Right. Did all councillors, including you, ever get a fuller briefing on this subject, as Laura Johnson had indicated in the last part of this email?
I can't remember.
Can we look at TMO 1001898, please? Now, I should explain what this is. This is the first page of a board pack for a TMO board meeting to be held on the 8th of January 2013. And you can see that from the top of the screen. And there's an agenda, it appears there. If we go to page 2 in this board pack, we can see some board minutes of a meeting of the TMO board that had taken place on the 15th of November 2012. And you are listed as present there, as a council-appointed board member, yes?
Yes.
Now, at that meeting, you may not recall this, but we'll look at a document. The chief executive gave a report. That would have been customary, would it?
Yes.
Yes. And we can see that report at page 12. And we can see at the foot of page 12 the Grenfell Tower regeneration project referred to there. If we go to the report itself, that's at TMO 1003796. And at page 12 of that, if we go to page 12 in that, please, we can see that this is the item for the report. And if you go to page 15 of that document, we can see here, embedded within it, item 5, fire risk assessments. So you can see that Grenfell had been discussed, but at the same time, here's a report on fire risk assessments. And it says this: all relevant fire risk assessments for common parts have been completed and the identified works have been categorised from 1 to 5 by risk. Categories 1 to 3 are deemed to be mandatory and have been actioned. These are primarily related to the installation of fire doors to tenanted properties. A number of door installations remain to be completed as part of these works, and we are working with internal teams, London Fire and Emergency Planning Authority, LFIPA, and RBKC to progress these. Where necessary, we shall assist RBKC in taking legal action to ensure that these works are completed. An assessment of the works identified as Category 4 and 5, recommendations only, is being undertaken to establish what action is to be taken and over what timescale. Notification of the requirements of the Regulatory Reform Order fire safety legislation has been sent to all leaseholders of a flat, advising that they should have their flat entrance doors checked to establish if they provide adequate fire safety. Now, we can see from this that FRAs, the fire risk assessments, produced mandatory works categorised by 5 levels of risk. Yes?
No, it says only 1 to 3 are mandatory.
Yes, sorry. There are mandatory works, but the works themselves are categorised by 5 levels of risk.
Yes.
Yes. Were you aware that fire risk assessments resulted in mandatory actions?
No.
You weren't. Were you aware that in 2012, the significant actions, according to Robert Black, related to the installation of fire doors?
I don't know. I mean, I recollect that so-called fire doors were installed on Grenfell Tower at some stage.
Yeah.
But not, I don't recollect them being installed on Lancaster West Estate generally.
Right. Did you read this report? You were at the board meeting,
Yes.
as we can see, but you would have read the Chief Executive's
yes.
report. Yes. Can we then look at the meeting minutes, please, for the meeting of the 15th of November 2012, at which you were present? It's TMO 1000188, page 3. If we look at part or paragraph 3, you can see that the Chief Executive's report is minuted here as having been delivered, and then questions were invited on the report. And the first item is fire risk assessments. It says, fire risk assessments, it was queried what action would be taken if leaseholders did not ensure that they had an entrance door that was fire risk compliant. Clarification was given that the letter was sent out by RBKC, but queries had been dealt with by the home ownership team. A letter had been sent to the fire brigade about their responsibilities on this matter and a subsequent meeting held. And then there's further discussion lower down the page. You can see, therefore, that the question of fire risk assessments and forcing leaseholders to have fire risk compliant doors was discussed. Does that tell us that you were aware from quite early on during your membership of the TMO board that the board was concerned with the issue or topic of fire risk assessments?
Yeah, but that was under a separate committee as a rule. We on the board, we only got what was included in the Chief Executive's report. And there was a subcommittee, which was, I think, called the Finance, Audit and Risk Subcommittee, that dealt with fire risk assessments in detail. And I was not a member of that.
Right. Nonetheless, this is a meeting of the full board, isn't it?
Yeah.
But can we take it from this document, both the presentation of the Chief Executive's report that I've shown you and the discussion we can see minuted here, that fire risk assessments were, or was, a topic discussed by the full board?
We're within the terms of the fire compliant doors, because there was an issue about leaseholders and who was responsible for ensuring that leaseholders did it.
Yes. Yes.
But I mean, for tenants, obviously the TMO could put the fire resistant doors on where they didn't exist.
Yes. Was there any discussion or consideration given by the board in and from into 2012 about how the board should go about measuring the TMO's progress with FRAs or the actions arising from FRAs, fire risk assessment?
That's a long time ago. I really can't remember.
Right. Do you remember whether there was any discussion or consideration of how to measure or track progress of closing out FRA items?
I think that was delegated to the subcommittee that I just referred to.
And who was on that subcommittee? Can you
I have
help?
no idea.
You weren't,
No.
you told us. Who was in charge of the subcommittee?
I don't know.
You don't know.
You mean who was the chair?
Yes.
I have no idea.
Who reported to that subcommittee? Do you know?
I don't know.
Right. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to just finish off on this topic before asking for a break. We'll
Yes,
take an
that's all right.
slightly earlier break than when we
Well, we
started.
started a bit early.
We started a bit early, exactly. Can I ask you to look, please, at the minutes of a Housing and Property Scrutiny Committee meeting of the 8th of November 2012, 7 days before this TMO board meeting. Those minutes are at RBK 30021831. Now, you were not a member of that committee at this date, as we know, because you joined in May 2014, as you've told us. Nor, I think, were you in attendance in the public gallery.
No.
Nonetheless, let me ask you about it. Can we go to page 3 under item A5? And you can see there that there's a discussion of the TMO mid-year review. It says there, a third of the way down your screen, the committee expressed continued concern over flat entrance doors in TMO stock that were non-compliant with fire safety standards. Mr. Black responded by emphasising the vast majority of the flats were designed to contain fire. He also confirmed the TMO was working with the fire brigade at the highest level, and the 68 leaseholders with non-compliant doors had been informed by letter that it was their responsibility to meet the standard, and they were responding. Councillor Pascal said that he appreciated the work already carried out on this issue, but urged all parties to make as much progress as quickly as possible. Councillor Dent Code praised the refurbishment of Grenfell Tower, which she felt showed the council had listened to those residents. Did you realise at the time that the question of flat entrance doors had been raised at scrutiny committee?
No, but I knew that by that date the fire compliant doors the allegedly fire compliant doors had been placed on the doors of all the tenanted properties in Grenfell Tower.
By that date, by November 2012?
Yes. Yes, I think they were put in around about 2011 because I remember visiting the tower and noticing the new doors.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Chairman, is that a convenient moment for a break?
Yes, I think it is. Thank you very much. Well, Ms. Blakeman, we have a break during the afternoon. We're going to take it now. We'll resume at, I think, 3:25, please. And I must ask you not to talk about your evidence or anything to do with it while you're out of the room.
Right, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Right, 3:25, please. Thank you. Yes, would you ask Ms Blakeman to come back in, please? Thank you. Right, Ms Blakeman, ready to carry on?
Yes, thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, Mr Millett.
I'm going to turn to the topic of residents' complaints about fire safety maintenance. Can I ask you to start, please, with TMO 00845616? This is an email in February 2013, at the foot of the screen, from Francis O'Connor to you, copied to a number of others, both at the TMO and within housing at RBKC. And it says at the very foot of the page, "Dear Judith," and then if we turn to page 2, he says, "We're grateful for your recent interventions on the Verity Close windows issue, and no less on the Grenfell Tower fire safety issue, where your intervention appears to have had immediate effect. However, while we welcome the proposed fire safety exercise by LFB at Grenfell Tower, we still have doubts that this will fully address the issues at this site." I'm just pausing there. Was that a reference to your recent request, the request you had made earlier on that month, for a fire safety exercise to be performed at Grenfell Tower?
I think so.
Yes. And do you agree that your intervention that he refers to had an immediate effect?
Well, it was good that it did, yeah.
If you continue, he says, in the next paragraph but one, "We have other concerns and other evidence which we have not yet aired. Please see the attached Grenfell Tower fire risk assessment from November 2012, which was supplied to us by Janice Ray some weeks ago. Most of the content is, of course, fairly routine until you get to page 28, where the following is recorded." Quotes, "From the asset records provided to me by the TMO, the emergency lighting and fire alarm systems, along with the dry riser, firefighter lifts and the hose reels installed in this building, are all subject to a maintenance contracts. Testing, servicing and maintenance is being carried out by professional third-party contractors on a planned preventive maintenance programme, with records being kept centrally by TMO at the hub and by the contractor for all these systems. No test certificates have been seen to confirm this. RGE services are under contract to TMO to provide portable firefighting equipment, testing, servicing and maintenance. The fire extinguisher in this building, the basement boiler room, the lift motor room, the ground floor electrical room, plus other areas, were out of test date according to the contractor's label on the extinguishers. The last test date was on the 8th of August 2011. Some located in the roof level areas had condemned written on them in large black writing with the last test date of 2009 or 2010. This seems to indicate that monthly occupier inspections are not being carried out." And then he goes on about the caretaker and fire extinguishers, etc., in the next paragraph. And then, on the face of it, says Mr. O'Connor, "This is alarming evidence of serious ongoing negligence, rendered all the more alarming when considered as part of a history of negligence that in all likelihood stretches back to 2004 and beyond." And then he explains that he had chaired the EMB Property Management Committee in 2004. And then if you turn the page to page 3, second paragraph down, he says this: "We were intending to simply expose these failings on our blog, rather than waste our time and effort, as we had previously, in non-productive email exchanges with Miss Rumble and Miss Ray, who appear, as far as we can judge, not even to have read the current assessment. However, having witnessed more than once your willingness to act on the Grenfell Tower fire safety issue, and the speedier responses your interventions tend to elicit, we have decided to copy this material to you first, in the hope that you can elicit the necessary urgent responses from the responsible authorities." Now, a number of questions arise on what I've read to you at some length, I'm afraid. First, Francis O'Connor, is this right, had sent you a copy of the fire risk assessment.
Well,
Is that right?
He said he'd sent me a copy of the fire risk assessment. I only recollect that he sent me 1 or 2 pages from it,
Right.
not the whole document. I didn't get the whole document until after the fire.
Right. Did you read what he did send you?
Yes.
I see. Were you aware that residents could ask for copies of fire risk assessments?
No.
Right. Were you aware of how frequently a fire risk assessment would be carried out?
No.
Were you concerned at the time to learn that the service and maintenance of fire safety systems at Grenfell Tower was out of date?
Yes.
Now, Francis O'Connor suggested that they were going to blog about the issue rather than email Ms Rumble or Ms Ray. Did you share their view that emails to Ms Rumble and Ms Ray would not be productive?
Well, they were from time to time. I mean, with Siobhan Rumble, I had quite a good working relationship. I didn't know Janice Ray.
Right.
So with Siobhan Rumble, I would often talk to her rather than email her.
I see. So you didn't share entirely Mr O'Connor's view that it was a waste of time emailing Miss Rumble?
Well, not for me, no. It may have been for him.
Right. Did you think that there would be a different outcome if you emailed on behalf of the residents rather than the residents emailing these officers or executives of the TMO themselves directly?
From time to time, yes.
Yes. And what would make the difference? Why from time to time?
I think sometimes they thought that some of the residents were just being a nuisance, whereas if I sent an email, they would at least have to respond to it diplomatically.
Right. So you say from time to time they would think that the residents were just being a nuisance. Was that a frequent occurrence in your experience?
How can you define frequent?
No.
No, I can't either. I mean, I said from
Did it
time
happen
to time.
more than occasionally?
More than occasionally.
Yeah.
Only for certain individuals.
Right. Can you name the certain individuals?
Well, certainly Mr O'Connor was one of them.
Right.
Mr Daffan obviously was another.
Yeah, I see. Any others?
Mr Martindale. Can't think of any others offhand.
Right. If we look at your response on page 1 of this email chain, please. You respond to him on the 18th of February. And you say this: Dear Francis, thank you for this, it's very useful. I have asked for a full and comprehensive report once the emergency fire test at Grenfell Tower has been conducted, and also for this to be an item on the Lancaster West EMB meeting agenda. I have also asked for the likely timeframe within which we can expect a response. Were you aware at this time of whether the TMO had addressed the issues raised in the FRA?
No, but I think they said that they were going to.
Yes. Now, the FRA, of course, was dated November 2012.
Yeah.
This was now mid-February
Yes.
2013. Do you know whether they had done so or not as yet?
I don't know. I can't remember.
Did you ask anybody?
I may have asked Siobhan Rumble. I don't know.
Right. Do you think she was generally responsive to residents, in your experience of her?
She was rather robust with residents. She didn't take prisoners, as they say.
No.
But I've had quite a good working relationship with her.
Right. When you say she didn't take prisoners, do you mean that she more routinely than not rebuffed them in a robust way,
I don't mean that. No,
What do you mean?
it's the next sentence on about legitimate and vexatious complaints. I think sometimes she felt that some of the complaints were just vexatious.
Right. Well, let's look at that, because I was about to ask you that. Looking at the second and third paragraphs, you say, just for your information, I'd like to reiterate that the ward councillors are more than willing to address any legitimate concerns and complaints that residents raise with regard to the Calc project and the Grenfell Tower and Verity Close improvement works. What we are no longer prepared to address are complaints that are couched in tendentious, abusive, offensive or bullying terms. Neither will we tolerate visits to our surgery that are conducted in a similar fashion. I believe that Councillor Coleridge has given out much the same message. And then you go on, we will also not deal with vexatious complaints that are intended solely to delay the completion of the construction works. We've received and continue to receive a significant amount of feedback from local residents, and their most earnest wish is for the project to be completed on time and ideally before time. Most residents do not have the opportunity to leave the area for extended holidays to get away from the disruption. Kind regards, Judith. Now, in that second paragraph, in that middle sentence, you say, what we are no longer prepared to address are complaints that are couched in tendentious, abusive, offensive or bullying terms. What was that a reference to?
Sometimes, Mr O'Connor and Mr Daffan would come to our surgery and shout at us.
Why would they do that, do you think?
Well, at the time I thought they were just being annoying. I gradually realised as the years progressed that it was probably out of frustration as much as anything, and they didn't know quite how to move beyond their concerns and the shouting and what to do after that. And they found us fairly ineffective.
I see. So at the date of this email, were you still in the frame of mind that they were just being annoying, or had you yet begun to see that they might have a point?
I think at that stage I was at the point where I was thinking they were just being annoying.
Right. Okay. Now, if we go to LBI 402918, there's further correspondence between you and Francis O'Connor about vexatious complaints and Mr. Daffan's behaviour. And you can see there, this is an email that's it's quite hard to interpret. But if you look at the top of the page, it's dated 20th of February 2013, so 2 days after what we've just seen. And it's from you to a number of people who appear to be at the LFB and the TMO, and also to people at Leadbitter and RBKC, other councillors. But you say, Dear Francis, I'm assuming that it went to Mr. O'Connor. Dear Francis, I'm sorry you've taken my email personally, and I will give you the courtesy of a response. 1. Evidence to support my accusations can be found in the very significant body of emails sent to me and to council officers and contractors on behalf of your group, usually, but not exclusively, from Mr. Daffan, over a very long period of time. You may reread them at your leisure. As is evidenced by your reply to me, what may be written by one individual can be read by the recipient as an attack upon their good faith, and I certainly feel targeted personally by the tone of these emails, since most were addressed to me and not to the other two Notting Barnes Ward councillors. Now, do you remember, I should just show you, I think you respond to this, but do you remember the GAG blog publishing a blog called Pants on Fire?
Yes.
Let's look at it. It's IWS 402156. And it's dated the 17th of March 2013, so 3 weeks or so after your response to Mr. O'Connor. And there's a graphic in colourful terms in the middle of that page with something called the Pants on Fire Award. And if we turn to the next page of this, you can see that topic, so to speak, is identified in capital letters. The Grenfell Action Group Pants on Fire Awards. The first award goes to Blakeman herself, whose comeuppance is well overdue. And then there's some text below that, which is actually on the topic of calc, in fact. And there's quite a lot of detail there, which I don't want to overlook necessarily. My question is, did you believe at the time that it was because of your exchange with Mr. O'Connor that the GAG blog published its Pants on Fire blog and awarded you that honour?
It could have been. I honestly can't remember.
Right. Did you hear or see Mr. Daffan give evidence?
I watched some of it, yes.
Do you agree with him that the TMO had so marginalised, belittled and ignored him and the residents of Grenfell Tower that he had had no choice but to resort to this kind of means of communication in order to make his points?
I think that goes back to what I gradually realised was his increasing sense of frustration.
Right.
Because he was not very diplomatic in some of his approaches, which tended to put people off.
Now, in fact, GAG did blog about the findings in the fire risk assessment, that particular topic, looking at the topic itself rather than the tone of it all, on the 21st of February 2013, and we see that at TMO 00835-301. And I'll just put that up so it's there. Okay. That's where that topic was covered. it does say that a reaction was obtained from Ms. Rumble herself. And then there's a further blog on the 5th of March 2013, TMO 00833-831, which we'll look at that. And the title there is if we look at that, thank you, TMO Still Asleep at the Wheel. Did you read these specific blogs? Because they covered the topic of the fire risk assessment. Do you remember looking at it?
I must have done, because I used to read the gag blog quite avidly.
Right. Why did you do that?
Because it was quite interesting. And from time to time, they made some very, very valid points.
Right. So you weren't put off by the tone?
I personally wasn't, but I know that people at TMO were.
Right. Now, if we look at...
And the council.
Yes. If we look at the third paragraph of this blog, 5th of March 2013, TMO Still Asleep at the Wheel, we can see that it says, before going public on this issue, we had sent the full report to Councillor Judith Blakeman on the 18th of February and copied it simultaneously to the high and mighty at the TMO and RBKC. The only response we got was from Councillor Blakeman, which we produce below. And there is the text from the email that you sent back to Mr. O'Connor. And then it says, 3 cheers for Blakeman, but this wasn't her fault to begin with. Now, just pausing there, the factual point I want to get out of this is, it appears that you did receive the full FRA.
Well, so they said, but I was asked after the fire by some journalists to produce it, and I searched high and low for it, and I could only find the pages that Mr. O'Connor had sent.
Right. Now, just going back to the question of reading this blog, were you aware at this time whether the TMO took notice of the factual matters set out or identified in these blogs?
Well, I think, as I said in one of my statements, I used to draw the TMO's attention to the blog from time to time, particularly when I thought that they'd made some very valid points, and I was told that the TMO did not read the blog, and I didn't believe them.
Right.
I couldn't challenge that position.
No, well, we'll come to examine that in a little bit more detail shortly. If you stick with this blog, if you look at the middle of the first paragraph on page 1, which is next to the line drawing, it says that particular item, which is a post on the 21st of February, that particular item got 91 hits in a single day, so we know that it sparked a lot of interest and was read by a lot of people. The passage we quoted from the assessment report was highly suggestive of a general failure to inspect and maintain fire safety equipment at Grenfell Tower, and was further suggestive of an ongoing culture of negligence at the TMO. Were you yourself aware of a lot of interest in that blog and that topic at the time?
No.
Did you agree that there was a culture of negligence, so to speak, at the TMO?
Well, an employee of the TMO took me to the basement of Grenfell Tower, and I can't remember whether it was around about that time, I think it was, to see the terrible conditions down there. I was quite shocked by what I saw.
What did you see?
I saw that the floor was quite about 2 inches deep in water. The heating system didn't seem to be working properly. I'm trying to remember, it was quite a long time ago. It looked pretty awful, anyway.
But looking at fire safety specifically, so this blog is very specific on this point about fire safety. A general failure to inspect and maintain fire safety equipment at Grenfell Tower. Were you aware of a culture of negligence, so to speak, in that respect at the TMO?
I didn't have the technical knowledge to know that.
Right. As a board member of the TMO at this time, were you concerned to read that some residents, whether or not they spoke for the entirety of the building as a moot point, some residents were identifying a general failure to inspect and maintain fire safety equipment at Grenfell Tower? Yep. Were you not concerned that that might put you personally in breach of your duties as a director?
Well, I raised them with the chief executive, but I didn't get very far either.
Right. And when you didn't get very far, what did you do next?
I don't know. I can't remember.
Right. Given the seriousness of the allegation and given your position and your responsibilities as a board member, Can you assist us why you didn't get to the bottom of it, so as to discharge to the best of your reasonable abilities your obligations?
I don't know.
Right.
It was probably a lack of resources and lack of time.
Right.
Because I had a huge workload, and I still have a huge workload.
Yes.
And we have no support as an opposition group. No support whatsoever from the council to do our duties.
Did you ever consider whether the absence or lack of resources was in some respects disabling you from performing your duties as a director of the TMO?
Well, do you put it like that? I think that's quite a good description, yeah.
Is this the first time you've ever considered it in those terms?
Yes.
Really?
Well, we did ask. Our colleagues in neighbouring boroughs, both Labour-run and Conservative-run, opposition groups about the same size as ours, both had dedicated support. We asked for that before the fire, and we asked for that after the fire, and we asked several times before the fire, but each time it was refused. And we still have no support.
Who did you ask?
Town clerk.
Right. How did you ask him? At meetings, or are there...
I think
written
whoever was the leader of the Labour group at the time, and I think it was me on one occasion, wrote to the town clerk and asked for it.
Right.
Did you ever think about suggesting, as at a meeting of the board of the TMO, that more resources should be provided for scrutinising some of these things?
I don't know. I may have done. I may not have done. I can't remember.
Right. Thank you.
Can I go back, please, to your email exchange with Mr. O'Connor, TMO 008455616. If we go to page 1, we looked at this in some detail earlier. You can see that you say in the first line, I've read this to you already, that you'd ask for a full and comprehensive report once the emergency fire test at Grenfell Tower had been conducted, and for that to be an item on the Lancaster West EMB meeting agenda. Now, as we know, the fire risk assessment had been completed in November 2012. This correspondence was in February 2013. Did you ask, or did you receive a report for the EMB, for the purposes of giving to the EMB?
I can't remember.
Right.
Because I haven't been able to read my EMB papers because I didn't think they would be particularly relevant, and I handed them all over to the Metropolitan Police.
Right.
Shortly after the fire.
Yes. And they would have been disclosed to us and to the core participants, of course, in turn. My question is, why did you ask for the report to be made to the EMB as opposed to the TMO board itself?
But I can only assume from this that the EMB was still functioning.
But even so, why not ask for the report to be made to the TMO board, or for you to receive that report and for you to give it to the TMO board?
Well, I could have given it to the TMO board if I got it.
My question is, why the Lancaster West EMB board rather than the TMO board?
Yeah, well, my answer to that was because I suspect that the EMB board was still functioning then.
Right.
And that was the appropriate place for it.
I see. So just so that I'm clear, are you saying that as of February 2013, to the extent that for the time being the EMB was still functioning, it was that board that had responsibility for or oversight of fire safety matters at Grenfell Tower?
There was a very convoluted relationship between the EM board, the council and the TMO. The TMO sent officers to the EMB board meeting, but the EMB board managed Lancaster West, which included Grenfell Tower. And then, of course, the council oversaw both of them.
By this time, though, isn't it right that the EMB was not meeting regularly, wasn't properly funded, and wasn't really able to exercise full and proper oversight over the...
Well, that I don't know, because sometimes I wouldn't get papers for EMB meetings until after the meeting had actually taken place.
Why was that?
because of incompetence on the part of the then neighbourhood manager.
Did you not raise that with them?
Yes. And then they changed that position.
Given what you could see about the functionality of the EMB, why not take that to the TMO board and raise it with them?
Because I took it to the council, and the council dealt with it.
I see. Who did you think was responsible for oversight of fire safety matters at Grenfell Tower for the time that the EMB board was still at least notionally functioning?
Probably the EMB and the TMO.
Right. Did you ever address...
And the council.
Right. That sounds confusing. Did you ever address that?
It was confusing.
Did you ever address that confusion and try and sort it out?
Well, I know that I corresponded with the council about it, and the council eventually appointed a consultant to produce a report on the EMB.
Can we go to TMO 00830084, please? This is an email to you from Janice Ray, who was Health and Safety Director at TMO, on the 6th of March 2013. And let's wait for that to come up. TMO 00830084. There it is. Dear Councillor Blakeman, and it says, further to our previous correspondence, when you request that we urge the London Fire Brigade to undertake a fire safety exercise at Grenfell Tower similar to that undertaken recently at Trellick Tower, I can confirm that the LFB initially welcomed this offer. Further, we've placed this on the agenda for our next regular meeting with the LFB's fire safety team leader, which is scheduled to take place next week on the 13th of March 2013. We will press the LFB for a timescale when we can expect this exercise to take place, and I will, of course, inform you of the outcome of our discussions. And then it says this, with regard to concerns raised about fire extinguishers, Ricky Sams, Head of Building Services, confirms that all appliances at Grenfell Tower have now been replaced, inspected as necessary and are current. I would advise that we are currently working closely with the planned maintenance contractor who undertakes this work to ensure that all inspections and associated certification on all fire safety equipment throughout the entire housing stock are undertaken in a timely manner, reports are submitted, and continued compliance is ensured. I will contact you again to update you following next week's meeting with the LFB. Did you understand that checks on the fire extinguishers had been done following your email raising that complaint?
It's possible. I don't know.
You don't know? Did you understand that the TMO had raised issues with the maintenance contractor in response to your email?
Again, it might have happened because of my email. I don't know.
Right. Were you concerned that these steps had not already been taken in response to the fire risk assessment?
Yes.
Right. I mean, here is the picture that we're getting that these matters were only cured or steps taken towards their cure because you'd raised them rather than in response to the FRA.
It's possible. I don't know.
Right. Did you consider raising these issues and the issues of reactivity at a TMO board? We don't see that you did. Why is that?
I don't know.
And what about raising it with the Operations Committee, the TMO Operations Committee? Did you raise it with them?
I can't remember.
Right. Were you constitutionally, structurally able to raise concerns that you had with the Operations Committee, if you wanted to?
Well, I couldn't raise issues that were not on the agendas of any of the meetings. I suppose I could have raised issues outside.
Right. What about any other business? Well, you go...
I don't know, honestly.
Right, okay.
I really don't know.
Did you ever receive a report to the EMB about the maintenance of fire safety equipment?
I can't remember.
We haven't seen one, so
Okay.
The next question is, why did you not press for one?
It may have been round about the time when the EMB was about to about to be abolished.
Right. In which case, why not press for one for presentation at the TMO board?
I don't know. I can't remember.
Right. Or taking to those responsible in the council for the HPSC scrutiny committee.
I can't remember. I mean, I'm one person trying to deal with Grenfell Tower, Lancaster West, Nottingwood House, Allen and Barlow, Henry Dickens Court, all sorts of places. I mean, I can't focus on just one place.
No. Well, that litany gives us an insight, perhaps, to how easy or difficult it was to discharge your duties as a director of the TMO. Would that be right?
Exactly, yeah.
Did you ever get any assistance? Did you ever have any assistance even though you were a non-executive director, as you've explained, in the discharge of your functions as a director.
No.
Can we then look in a year ahead to 2014? Now, by September of that year, you were already on the Housing and Property Scrutiny Committee, and you'd been there for some months. Can we look at the minutes of that committee from the meeting of the 24th of September 2014? We find those at RBK 30's29277. And that's the first page. You can see the chairman and vice chairman there, councillors Marshall and Mackover, and you were also there as a member. Yes? Yes.
Yes.
And if we look at page 5, please, under section A6, live issues report from Director of Housing. First paragraph. Ms. Johnson introduced the report and invited questions from the committee. The chairman commended officers on their excellent work on fire doors. That comment from the chairman, the HPSC chairman, was due to Laura Johnson's report, which we can look at if you like, which noted that only 3 leaseholder doors across the whole housing stock required replacing. Do you recall that?
Not offhand, but if there were only 3 leaseholder doors remaining, that would have been a good result.
Yes, that is what, I mean, we can give the reference. That's RBK, perhaps we should just look at it. RBK 30's14527, please, at page 6. Just dive straight in and pick up the nugget in it. This is her report, page 6, and under fire doors, it says under 6.1, July, it had gone down from 37 to 11, and then this figure has reduced to 3 non-compliant doors, the remainder being confirmed compliant. That's what she had put before the committee, and you were there. On the basis of that evidence, is it right that there were, at that point now, no significant issues, so far as you as a member of that committee could see, with either flat entrance doors or the FRA programme?
Well, we have to take as written what's written there. I mean, if it was wrong, it was wrong.
Yes.
We wouldn't have challenged it.
You had no reason to disbelieve
No.
what she was telling you. Is that right?
No.
Okay. So you had no means of getting underneath the data and
No.
scrutinising it at a data level? No. And no doubt had no reason to distrust her?
No.
Can we look at next, please, at the report prepared for the HPSC meeting on the 13th of May 2015, RBK 2015, it's the next year, RBK 30's47681. And this is a live issues report prepared by the Director of Housing, Laura Johnson, for the HPSC on the 13th of May 2015. And if you go to paragraph 1.1, you can see the topic there, leaseholder doors identified as non-compliant. And you can see that it's, paragraphs 1.1 to 1.4, those are all set out.
I can't see paragraph 1.4. Right. Okay.
No,
I can now.
You can now,
Yeah.
right. If you go to paragraph 1.5, which you can just see, let's have that more visible. It's at the foot of page 1. Ongoing work to identify and change non-compliant doors. She says, KCTMO's programme of fire risk assessments, FRA, is ongoing and continues to consider the compliance of flat entrance doors as they form an integral part of the means of escape from the block. The FRA highlights any flat doors which are potentially non-compliant. Where clarification is required about the standard of a tenant's door, the fire consultant is instructed to attend, carry out an assessment and produce a report confirming what action is required. Where replacement is required, a repair order is raised for the installation of a suitably fire-rated self-closing door. Where a leaseholder's door is highlighted, the home ownership team write to the lessee seeking documentation confirming their door's compliance and offering an assessment if they are unable to provide this. The lessee is provided with a copy of the report, and where the door is deemed to be non-compliant, to date, we have worked with the leaseholder to persuade them to prioritise its removal. Were you aware that the programme to check front door fire safety compliance was continuing at that point?
I don't know. I can't remember.
It certainly looks as if it was. Would that be fair? A fair reading of this?
Well, I mean, there were 9,000 properties in the borough. I wouldn't be able to confirm that all of them had been replaced. I knew that ones of interest to me had been replaced.
Did you or the scrutiny committee generally, or the TMO board generally, consider whether this programme of inspection and assessment should be benchmarked in any way against other housing authorities elsewhere in the country?
I don't recollect anything like that.
No. Can we then go to the minutes of the scrutiny committee on the 13th of May itself, at which this report was discussed? This is at RBK 30144448. Let's look at page 1, where we can see who was there. And we can see you were there in the halfway down the list of attendee members. Yes?
Yes.
And Councillor Rockfielding Mellon was also in attendance. And if we go, please, to page 2 under item A5, we can see that it says there, Ms Johnson introduced the report and invited questions from the committee. Now, we've seen the report. In response to Councillor Bakhtiar, Ms Johnson advised that TMO tenant doors were checked for fire safety compliance as part of an annual programme and replaced if non-compliant. She agreed to provide an update to the committee on the exact number of non-compliant TMO tenant doors. Action, Ms Johnson. Councillor Pascal thanked the TMO and officers for the follow-through and the continuing work on fire door compliance. Do you know what had prompted Councillor Bakhtiar's question or concern at this point, mid-May 2015?
Yeah, before each scrutiny committee meeting, the Labour members of that would hold a pre-meeting and we would determine who would ask what questions.
Right. And you determined that Councillor Bakhtiar should ask that question, is that right?
Well, the three of us would have confirmed that he would ask that question, yes.
Right. When you got together and determined that he should ask that question, why that question? What was it that prompted that question to be asked?
Probably because it was something that he felt quite strongly about. I honestly don't know. I can't remember.
Right.
But it would look silly if the same person asked all the questions.
Now, I'm not really focusing on the identity of the councillor asking the question. What I'm really trying to get at is what prompted the question to be asked.
I don't know.
Right.
Can't remember.
Right. It indicates on the face of it that some councillors, including him and, is this right, you, were concerned about the process or progress of the checking of tenant doors for fire safety compliance. Is that right?
I think it would indicate an awareness of the fact that there was an ongoing programme.
Well, there was an ongoing programme.
Yeah.
But was there a concern among the three of you that programme was still ongoing?
Well, probably not, because these things take time.
Right. But they do take time, but this is fire safety, and so they can't take that much time, can they?
Well, no, but I mean, the TMO themselves would say that they didn't have the resources to rush anything through.
Right. Even if it was fire safety?
Yeah. I mean, in terms of their capital programmes, I was always told that they had a separate pot of money for anything urgent under fire safety, so they could deal with anything that, well, health and safety, not fire safety, health and safety, anything that came up as an emergency.
Right.
They could deal with it immediately.
Right. Two things flowing from that answer. You say they had a separate pot of money. Do you mean the TMO?
Yes.
Right. How big was that separate pot of money?
I've no idea.
In 2015, roughly, do you know?
No idea.
And who had control of that separate pot of money?
Well, the TMO.
Yes,
I mean, it would have been
yes.
part of the money that the Housing Revenue Account provided to the TMO to fulfil their duties, and they kept a part of it not committed to any works because of health and safety issues that may emerge.
Yes, but the second thing that arises from your answer was, well, hey, you say health and safety, not fire safety.
No, health and safety, that includes fire safety, but not exclusively fire safety.
I see what you mean. Right. I detected from the answer that health and safety did not include fire
Oh,
safety.
no, it would all forms of safety
Right.
and health.
Thank you. But do I take it from that answer in general that whatever the pot of money was, even though it would cover fire safety, it wasn't big enough to cover immediate or urgent replacement of non-compliant flat front doors, tenants' flat front
Well, a lot of that would depend on getting access, on having sufficient contractors to do the work. I mean, you can't do it all immediately.
No, my question is directed at the money.
The money.
Yes. Do I take it from your evidence so far that the pot of money, however it big, wasn't big enough to fund an urgent flat front door replacement programme?
I can't remember, but I suspect not.
No. Can we then go further forward in time, please, to October 2015, TMO 0084 2271. This is a deficiency notice. It will be when it comes up. There it is. And it's dated, note the date, 12th of October 2015. And it's addressed to Janice Ray at the TMO. And it's a notification of fire safety deficiencies at Adair Tower. And you can see from the second paragraph that the cure date is the 28th of March 2016. And if we go to page 3, you can see that there is a schedule. And under that schedule, you can see that there is a list of the specific contraventions of the fire safety order. And they are, I'm just following them down the pages, Article 11 on page 3, which is failure to monitor and review the significant findings to ensure works have been completed. If you turn the page, please, you can see the next one is 17.1, quite long, but basically a failure to ensure that the fire resistance of the protected route was maintained, the route being compromised by fitting doors that did not have 30 minutes fire protection and some self-closing devices missing. Article 8 at the foot of the page, general fire precautions identified as significant findings in the fire risk assessment not implemented. Now, I've shown you quite a bit of detail there. First question, did you see this notice at the time?
I don't think so, because I wasn't on the Finance, Audit and Risk Committee.
You weren't on the finance...
That was a committee that dealt with fire safety.
The Finance, Audit and Risk Committee of the TMO?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I have seen this since, but
yes.
I can't remember whether it was before or after. I think it was probably round about the time of after the Adair Tower fire.
Right. Was the fact of this deficiency notice brought to the attention of the board?
Yes.
It was.
Well, they had no option because it was a very public fire. I mean, there have been other deficiency notices.
No, wait a minute. No, the fire, this is... I'm not being critical for not remembering the precise sequence of events, but the fire happened 22 days later.
Oh, right. In that case, I wouldn't have seen that particular notice until after the fire.
No. Right. So, TMO board did not see this document.
No.
TMO board
not
made
until
aware
after the fire at Adair Tower.
At the time it was issued, and similarly weren't made aware of it.
No.
Right. Now, can we go back to this subcommittee? You say you wouldn't have seen it because you were not on the Finance, Audit and Risk Committee. And you say that was the committee that dealt with fire safety. Who was on that committee?
I can't remember.
Who headed it?
I don't know. You'd have to check. I can't remember.
You're quite sure there was a subcommittee?
Oh, yes. Yes, I mean, because they received all the fire safety reports and they dealt with fire safety.
Do you know when you were dealing with Mr. O'Connor's fire safety concerns relating to Grenfell Tower in February 2013, did you not put or seek to put that into the hands of this committee?
No, I don't think I knew about the committee at that stage.
You didn't know?
No, I knew about the committee. I didn't know. I assumed it was about finance and audit rather than risk. I didn't realise that it did fire safety as well.
When did you learn that?
Probably after the Adair Tower fire.
31st of October 2015.
Okay, yeah.
Right. So is this right? You've been on the board of the TMO for some years, but only discovered that the Finance and Audit Committee dealt with fire safety after October 2015. Is that right?
We had a session on risk, but I don't recollect it being specifically about fire safety. And I can't remember when we had the session on risk.
Right. Well, maybe we'll come back to look at that later on. But of course, you know that after the Adair fire, there were still continuing questions about fire safety.
Yeah.
And we know that we'll come to it later in your evidence that you produced 2 matrices
Yeah.
in relation to Grenfell Tower
Absolutely.
in August 15 and May 16. But those didn't go to any member of that subcommittee, did they? As far as I know.
Not as far as I know. I mean, TMO, I think the TMO had them. I'm not sure. I sent them to the council. And the council had overall responsibility for the TMO, so they may or may not have passed them over to the TMO.
Right. But you can't tell me anything about this subcommittee.
No, I can't.
Right. Let's then look a little bit more closely at the Adair Tower fire then. As a fact, and I've said it to you, I'll say it again, the fire broke out at Adair Tower on Saturday, the 31st of October 2015, 22 days after this deficiency notice was served. And the fire was then raised at scrutiny at the next HPSC meeting on the 5th of November 2015, 5 days later. We can look at the meeting minutes for that meeting. RBK 47688, please. And you can see that you were present as one of the members of the committee there.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. And if you go to page 6, please, A7, live issues report, you can see live issues report by the Director of Housing. Mr. Black provided an update, he was the CEO, in fact, provided an update on the major fire at Adair Tower, which had occurred on Saturday, 31st October, on the 3rd floor. He reported that the investigation was ongoing, but the emergency planning in place had worked, and the fire doors had also worked well. He explained the timelines for tenants regaining access to their flats and the rehousing of those unable to return. The chairman stressed the severity of smoke damage and how that can affect one's possessions. Mr. Black said that the TMO was working with tenants to ascertain what they could still use, and he said that it was compulsory for all tenants to have their own home insurance. Councillor Blakeman asked why tenants were led out of smoke-filled stairways and consequently had to be treated for smoke inhalation. Mr. Black explained that the policy was to stay in your flat and wait to be rescued by the natural reaction of people was to flee. He said that there was no main alarm system, but the fire brigade had arrived within 2 to 3 minutes. Now, there's no mention there in those minutes by Mr. Black of the deficiency notice I showed you that had been served on the 12th of October. Do you remember whether he raised it or not?
I'm sure he didn't.
You're sure he didn't?
Yeah.
No. Should it have been raised?
Well, I would have thought so, yes.
Yes. And as a board member, would I be right in thinking that you would have expected to be told that sort of information by the Chief Executive?
Yes, but I wasn't.
No. Now, given Mr. Black's statement that I've just read to you is recorded here that people's natural reaction was to flee, did you question whether the TMO had adequate and safe arrangements in place for those residents who did wish to or needed to escape during a fire in a block such as Adair Tower?
Sorry, I'm not sure. What's the question?
But given that you can see, as I've shown you, in response to your question, that Mr. Black said that the policy was to stay in your flat and wait to be rescued, but the natural reaction of people was to flee. Given that he said that the people's natural reaction was to flee, did you ask whether the TMO had adequate and safe arrangements in place for those residents who either wished to or needed to flee?
I may have done, because my colleague Councillor Mason was present when he heard about the fire, and I know he was very concerned about it.
Present where?
At Adair Tower.
In the building?
No, he responded. He
Right.
doesn't live. He lives further down the road.
Well, he went to the.
He went to the fire.
Yes.
Once he was advised of it. Yeah.
Yes, but did you?
So I may have raised that point.
You may have read. Do you remember whether you got an answer to that question?
I can't remember.
Now, the stay put policy, of course, would be irrelevant, wouldn't it, to any resident who either needed to flee perhaps because the fire was in their own flat, or because they wanted to flee.
Yes.
So why did nobody challenge Mr. Black with that point? Why did nobody say to Mr. Black, well, come on, there would be people wanting to flee. Why have you not got arrangements in place to cater for them?
No, I think further down he reports that a local church had kindly opened its doors to tenants affected, so clearly there was nothing in place.
That's to receive people who had chosen to flee.
Yes.
My question was really more directed to enabling them to get out of the building.
Well, what I understood about the TMO's policy was that you shouldn't leave the building unless that you were in the actual location of the fire.
Indeed. But
That's what we were told the policy was.
Yes. Given that there was an element of flight involved in any fire, can you explain why nobody asked Mr. Black, well, what do we do with those people who want to get out?
Well, they may have done, I don't know, because further down he says that a local church had kindly opened its doors, so that somebody may have asked him.
Yes, but the local church would receive people who had successfully got out.
Yes.
My question is about the management of those people in the process of escape. Did nobody ask Mr. Black, what do we do? How do we assist those people who want to escape to escape?
I don't know.
Right. Can we then look at the Chief Executive's report prepared by Mr. Black for the meeting on the 26th of November 2015 of the TMO board? This is at TMO 00886021. Here's the agenda for that meeting. And if we go to page 47, we'll see the report by Mr. Black as the Chief Executive, 26th of November 2015. And if we go to page 50, we can see the item on Adair Tower embedded in that report. Under item 6, fire at Adair Tower, thank yous. There's quite a lot in there. It's a long list of people to thank. As we can see, Janice Ray gets the first spot, and you can see what is said there. And if you cast your eye down the list, you'll see what is there and what isn't there. And what isn't there is any mention in the minutes by Robert Black of the deficiency notice that had been served on the 12th of October I showed you. Mm-hmm. Again, do you know whether he raised it at that meeting? You say we saw he didn't at the 5th of November meeting.
I don't think so.
Right. And again, should it have been raised?
Yes, of course it should.
And again, as a board member, you would have expected to have been
Yes.
provided with that sort of information. Can we next go, please, to TMO 1004741? This is Robert Black's report for the next TMO board meeting, 4th of January 2016. TMO 1004741. What will come up, I think, is the agenda. That's not very helpful. Right. Just bear with us for a moment. Mr. Chairman, I can hear a rumble of thunder, and I'm hoping that the absence of this document and the thunder are not connected.
Yeah, that had crossed my mind as well, but I think we ought to
We'll wait to see whether both...
wait a bit to see whether we can recover it. Well, we're getting there.
Right, that is exactly where we start. Can we please then go in this pack of documents to page 64? There is the board report by Robert Black as Chief Executive. And can we please look at item 5 on page 67, where that topic is covered, the Adair Tower fire. And he says, we've been advised by the London Fire Brigade that RBKC/TMO will be served with 2 enforcement notices as a result of the fire risk assessments the brigade undertook following the fire at Adair Tower. One enforcement notice will cover Adair Tower and one will cover Hazelwood Tower. The two towers were built to the same design, having two separate staircases, one for accommodation access, the main staircase, and one for emergency, the escape staircase. We have yet to receive the actual notices, but have been advised that the key matters of concern relate to the design of the main staircase ventilation system and the lack of self-closers on the individual flat front doors. It is expected that we should receive the notices in the next week or so. And then he goes on, Robert Black has updated Laura Johnson, Director of Housing for RBKC, who has briefed Councillor Fielding Mellon. Did you read this report before
Yes.
this board meeting? You did. Did you know when you read this report what enforcement notices were?
Not really, no.
Right.
I mean, I knew that they would be notices requiring works to be done.
Did you know that they were a precursor to possible criminal prosecution?
I think I only became aware of that after this inquiry started. I'm not
Right.
sure. I mean, I know now.
Right.
I don't know if I knew at the time. I can't remember.
So what was
I doubt it.
what was your reaction to seeing that the LFB was going to serve two enforcement notices on RBKC and TMO?
Well, my reaction was they're going to serve two enforcement notices.
I know, that's-
and jolly good too.
You thought that was a good thing?
Yeah.
Why did you think that was a good thing?
Because at the same time, I was having all these concerns about the fire safety at Grenfell Tower, and I'd been raising issues there.
I see. In your role as member of the TMO board, which you still were, I think, at this time, were you not concerned that you were a director of a company which was on the receiving end of an LFB enforcement notice?
Yes.
You were concerned about that?
Yes.
What was your concern in that respect?
Well, my concern was it was really a bad situation that it had got to that point.
Yeah. And did you understand? Can you explain what you understood the consequences of the receipt of the enforcement notice would be for the TMO?
My understanding of the consequence was that they had to take action very swiftly. I didn't at that stage know that they could then be prosecuted if they didn't.
When you read this report, which was, of course, before the meeting, well, let me ask you, did you read this report before the meeting?
Yes.
At that stage, did you make any further inquiries yourself about how come things had come to such a pass, such that the LFB had issued two enforcement notices?
I think I may have done, because it was very much along the same time as I was expressing concerns about Grenfell Tower.
Who did you ask?
It may have been Laura Johnson, it may have been the TMO, it may have been Peter Madison, it may have been Janice Ray, I can't remember.
What answers were you given?
I can't remember.
Do you remember whether you were satisfied with what they told you or dissatisfied with what they told you? Whatever it was.
I think if I raised it, I would have got the same kind of bland reassurances that I'd been getting all along.
Right. Bland reassurances in what terms?
Don't worry about it, we're on top of it, kind
Right.
of thing.
Did you not seek to press them about how come the LFB had served two enforcement notices in respect of this building in circumstances where the TMO had, so far as you were being told, a reliable and effective programme for closing out fire risk assessment risk items?
Sorry, what was the question?
The question is, did you not seek to press them with the question as follows: how come the LFB has served two enforcement notices in respect of Adair Tower in circumstances where the TMO, you're telling me, had a reliable and effective programme for closing out
Yeah,
fire
I
risk
think I
assessment?
may have raised that, yes.
Right. Who did you ask?
Well, I may have raised it at the board meeting.
Okay. At the board meeting. But you didn't ask Laura Johnson, or did you?
I may have done. I don't know.
You don't remember. Let's look at the minutes of the board meeting. We'll cover this in the 5 minutes we've got left or so, Mr. Chairman, if that's convenient. In fact, there's quite a lot on the board minutes, so that may be a vain promise.
Well, does that mean that
I think we might
started?
want to, looking at the number of questions that flow from the minute itself, it's probably sensible, given that we've only got 4 minutes left till 4:30, and we started early, we should call it a day there.
Yes, right. Well, I think it's sensible not to start this topic at this stage. It sounds like it might take a little while, so we'll break it for the day now. I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to come back on Monday to answer some more questions.
I'm expecting to come
I
back on
thought you
Monday,
might be.
yes.
Good. All right. Well, then we'll resume at 10 o'clock on Monday, please. And again, I'm going to ask you not to talk to anyone about your evidence or anything to do with it over the break. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right to go to the usher, please. Right, Mr. Millett, thank you very much.
Yes.
10 o'clock on Monday.
Monday morning. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.